Deep in the heart of the emerald world, where the sun pierced the canopy in golden spears and the air hummed with life, there was a jungle that had forgotten how to sing. It was not a silence of emptiness, but a silence of separation. The hum of the bees was a lonely drone, the chatter of the monkeys a nervous clatter, and the roar of the waterfall a solitary boom. The animals went about their days in their own corners, their voices no longer weaving together into the grand, vibrant tapestry of sound that was the jungle's true heartbeat. This troubled a young monkey named Mika more than anything. While his troop swung through the fig trees, concerned only with the next ripe fruit, Mika would sit on the highest branch he could find, his head cocked, listening for a song he had only heard in stories from old Tumba, the silverback gorilla. "It was a sound, little one," Tumba would rumble, his voice like stones rolling down a hill. A rhythm that came up from the roots and down from the stars. When the great drums played, the hummingbirds danced with the elephants, and the butterflies knew the jaguar's path. We were not just neighbors, we were one pulse. But the great drums were lost, hidden away after a great fear had scattered the tribes of the jungle. And the rhythm faded, leaving behind a quiet unease. The trouble began in earnest on the day the rumble vines failed. The rumble vines were thick, ancient creepers that, when thumped by the boars, would send a vibration through the earth, a signal that the sweet yellow berries by the sparkling river were ripe. It was one of the last traditions that connected different animal families. Mika watched as Bumba, a young, stout boar, charged and thumped the vine with his tough snout. Thump, thump, thump. The vibration traveled, but it was weak, confused. It reached the parrots, who shrieked in alarm instead of a celebration. It reached the river, where the otters, misunderstanding, scattered instead of gathering. The message was lost. The berries were eaten by a few, and the rest fell, unpicked, into the water. A squabble broke out. The boars blamed the parrots for their noise. The parrots shrieked that the boar's signal was too faint. The otters, returning, chittered angrily about missing the feast. "See," Mika said, leaping down to land beside his best friend, Kipo, a slow-moving sloth who was hanging upside down from a nearby branch, meticulously chewing a leaf. "It's happening again. No one listens. No one is together." Kipo finished his mouthful with a slow, deliberate swallow. "The vine was thumped," he said, his words arriving like drifting seeds. "The berries were there. The listening is the problem." "That's what I mean," Mika exclaimed, pacing back and forth on the branch. "The listening is gone because the rhythm is gone. We need the great drums." From a hollow in the tree, a flash of brilliant blue and gold emerged. Pico, a toucan with a beak almost as large as his body and a personality to match, fluttered down. "The drums," he squawked. "Those are a myth, Mika. A bedtime story for tiny cubs who still believe frogs can sing opera." "Old Tumba says they were real," Mika insisted, his voice firm. "Old Tumba also says he once wrestled a crocodile for a mango," Pico retorted, preening a feather. "The point is, the jungle is fine. A little quiet, maybe. Less noisy for my afternoon naps." But the jungle was not fine. Later that day, a family of deer, startled by a falling branch, bolted straight through a patch of poison petal flowers because the chattering monkeys who usually acted as lookouts were too far away, foraging for themselves. The bees, who pollinated the poison petals, had been driven off by the bad-tempered hornets. Everything was connected, and the disconnection was causing harm. That night, as fireflies blinked their lonely codes in the dark, Mika went to see old Tumba. The great gorilla was sitting at the entrance of his cave, gazing at the tapestry of stars above the canopy. "The fear is returning, little one," Tumba said without turning. "When the rhythm is lost, fear fills the space. Each animal fears for itself alone." "Where are the great drums, Tumba?" Mika asked, his voice small but determined. "I want to find them. I want to bring the rhythm back." Tumba turned his massive, wise head. His dark eyes held a galaxy of memories. "It is a dangerous quest. The drums were taken to the Heartstone Peak, the highest and most treacherous place in the jungle, to keep them safe during the Great Fear, the time of the landslides. The path is forgotten, and the peak is guarded by the echo birds." Pico, who had been listening from a nearby branch, let out a nervous chuckle. "Echo birds? You mean the birds who never say anything original? How dangerous can they be?" Tumba's gaze silenced him. "They do not just repeat sounds, little toucan. They absorb them. They can take your own voice and use it to confuse you, to lead you off cliffs, to make you doubt your own mind. They live in a valley of echoes, where sound becomes a maze. Many have gone to find the drums. None have returned. Mika's heart thumped against his ribs, a frantic, solitary rhythm. He looked at his own small hands, good for swinging and picking fruit, but not for fighting. He was not the strongest or the bravest in his troop, but he was the one who listened. And he knew, deep in his soul, that the jungle was dying a slow, quiet death. "I have to try," Mika whispered. Tumba studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow, grave nod. "The journey requires more than one set of skills. You will need a strong back to clear the path, a sharp eye to see the way, and a clever mind to solve the unsolvable." And so the quest began. Mika's first recruit was Bumba, the boar. He found him by the now-empty berry patch, snuffling grumpily at the ground. "Bumba," Mika said, landing softly before him. "You are the strongest in the jungle. We need your strength to reach the Heartstone Peak." Bumba looked up, his small eyes suspicious. "Why should I help?" "The parrots call me a clumsy oaf. Because when the rhythm returns, your thump will be heard clearly by all," Mika said. "No more missed berry feasts. Your strength will be the foundation of the song." Bumba puffed out his chest. The idea appealed to him. With a grunt that was almost a yes, he agreed. Pico, of course, needed no convincing once he realized the adventure was truly happening. The chance to be the first toucan in generations to see the Heartstone Peak was too great a lure for his pride. "Well, someone has to navigate," he declared. "These monkey eyes are good for spotting bugs, but my eyes can see the whole jungle from above. You'd be lost without me." Their final recruit was the most difficult. Kipo the sloth. "Kipo," Mika said, looking up at his friend. "We need you." Kipo's head turned with glacial slowness. "The journey is long." "Yes, I am not. But you are clever," Mika insisted. "You see things the rest of us miss because we are always moving too fast. You remember everything. You can solve the puzzles the echo birds will set." Kipo considered this. He looked at Mika's eager face, at Pico's impatient fluttering, at Bumba's solid, waiting presence. He thought about the quiet jungle, and how even his slow, peaceful life felt lonelier without the underlying hum of connection. The rhythm would be nice, he admitted. And with a sigh that took 5 seconds to complete, he began his slow climb down. Their journey took them deep into parts of the jungle Mika had only heard of in whispers. They traveled for days. Bumba used his powerful tusks and shoulders to clear paths through thick, tangled undergrowth. Pico flew ahead, scouting from the treetops, calling down warnings of sheer drop-offs or patches of quick mud. "Left. Go left," he'd squawk. "The right path leads to the stinging ferns. And trust me, you don't want a stung snout, Bumba." Kipo, riding on Bumba's broad back, was their living map and memory. "The stream we crossed yesterday," he would murmur. "It flows from the Weeping Stone. The peak is west of that." Mika was the heart of the group, keeping their spirits up. When Pico's pride led them slightly astray, Mika didn't scold. He found the sweetest passion fruit to share. When Bumba grew frustrated with the slow pace, Mika would thump a cheerful beat on a hollow log, making the boar's hooves tap involuntarily. When Kipo seemed lost in thought, Mika would ask for his opinion, reminding everyone of the sloth's vital role. They passed through the Valley of Whispers, where the wind through the strange, porous rocks created soft, sighing voices that called their names. Pico, startled, flew towards what he thought was Mika's voice and nearly got tangled in a web of sticky, scentless spider vines. It was Kipo who, remembering a story about the valley, advised them to plug their ears with soft moss and follow only Bumba's steady, vibration-making footsteps. They crossed the chattering chasm on a bridge of ancient, intertwined roots. The chasm was so deep that the river at the bottom was a silver thread, and the sound of the water rushing over rocks was a constant, chaotic babble that made it hard to think. Bumba, nervous about the narrow path, froze in the middle. It was Pico, flying just ahead of him, chirping a steady, rhythmic beat. Step. 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 Good. Step. That guided the terrified boar across. They were learning to listen to each other. Their own small rhythm was beginning to form. Finally, they stood at the entrance to the Valley of Echoes, the gateway to the Heartstone Peak. It was a place of stark, terrifying beauty. The valley was a sheer-sided bowl of polished black stone. In the center, the majestic Heartstone Peak stabbed towards the sky. But the path to the peak was through the valley, and the valley was alive with sound. As soon as Mika took a single step into the valley, his footfall didn't just echo, it multiplied. Step, 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 step. It sounded like 100 monkeys were marching behind him. "Who's there?" Pico squawked. There. The valley threw back at him, the question echoing from every direction. Bumba let out a nervous grunt. Grunt, 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 grunt. The echoes responded, growing deeper and more aggressive. "This is unsettling," Kipo said, his slow words bouncing around them like lazy, confusing balls. Unsettling, settling, telling, lying, the echoes twisted. They tried to push forward, but the sounds became a wall. The echoes of their own fears and doubts were used against them. A whisper that sounded like Mika's mother called him home in a panicked voice. A roar that mimicked a jaguar sent Bumba skittering sideways. The echoes of Pico's own boasts were thrown back at him, making him sound foolish and arrogant. They huddled together, disoriented and frightened. This was the power of the echo birds. They couldn't be seen, only heard, and they weaponized sound itself. "We'll never get through," Pico cried, his voice trembling. "They just use our own voices against us." And in that moment, Mika remembered old Tumba's words. "They can take your own voice and use it to confuse you." He looked at his friends. Bumba, strong but fearful. Pico, sharp-eyed but proud. Kipo, clever but slow. And himself, small but determined. Their individual voices were being used to create chaos. "That's it," Mika said, his eyes widening. "We're fighting them with the wrong song. We're each using our own sound. But the echo birds can only copy what we give them. What if we give them a new sound? A sound we make together?" The others looked at him, confused. "We need to make a song they can't twist," Mika explained. "A song that only works when all our parts are together." He began, thumping his chest softly. Thump, thump. It was a simple, steady beat. Bumba, understanding, tapped his hoof. Clop, clop. It was heavier, grounding the rhythm. Pico, catching on, began to click his beak in a sharp, staccato counter-rhythm. Click-a-click-click. Kipo, from his perch, began to hum. It was a low, deep, resonant hum that filled the spaces between the other sounds. At first, the echoes tried to mimic them. Thump, thump, clop, clop, click, click, But they could only copy the individual parts. The magic wasn't in the separate sounds, but in how they fit together. The beat, the clop, the click, and the hum created a complex, interlocking rhythm that was joyful and strong. The echoes, trying to replicate each part separately, created only a jumbled, messy noise. The friends, encouraged, played louder. They started to move forward, their combined rhythm a shield against the chaotic echoes. They were creating something new, something the valley had never heard before. A song of friendship and cooperation. As they reached the center of the valley, the echo birds themselves appeared. They were not monstrous, as Mika had imagined, but small, shimmering birds with feathers that shifted color like oil on water. They flocked around the group, not attacking, but listening, their heads tilted in curiosity. They had spent so long absorbing and reflecting the fearful, solitary sounds of intruders that they had forgotten what a true, harmonious song sounded like. The leader of the echo birds, a slightly larger bird with a crest of feathers, flew down and landed on a rock near Mika. It opened its beak, and instead of an echo, it tried to mimic their combined song. It failed, but the attempt was not hostile. It was a question. Mika smiled. He slowed their rhythm, making it simpler. He looked at the echo bird and thumped his chest, inviting it to join. Slowly, tentatively, the echo bird added its own voice, a beautiful bell-like chime that wove perfectly into their music. Then another bird joined, with a soft whistle. Then another and another. Soon, the entire flock was adding their voices to the song, not as mimics, but as contributors. The Valley of Echoes was no longer a place of confusion, but a grand, natural orchestra. The path to the Heartstone Peak was now clear. The echo birds, far from guarding the drums, guided them to the summit. At the very top, under a sky so close you felt you could touch the stars, sat the great drums. They were not giant, as the stories said, but 3 simple, elegant drums carved from a single, fallen starwood tree. One was small and high-pitched, one was medium, and one was large and deep. They were covered in a fine layer of moss and dust, waiting. With a deep breath, Mika stepped forward. He picked up 2 smooth stones that lay beside the drums. He looked at his friends, at the echo birds, and then out over the vast, sleeping jungle below. He hit the largest drum. Boom. The sound was not loud, but it was profound. It was a sound you felt in your bones. It rolled down the mountain, through the Valley of Echoes, and out over the treetops like a gentle wave. He hit the medium drum. Dum. And then the small one. Tek-a-tek-tek. It was the same rhythm they had created together in the valley. The boom, the dum, and the tek-a-tek-tek. The echo birds, hearing their new song amplified by the drums, took flight, carrying the rhythm on their wings, weaving it through the air, spreading it to every corner of the jungle. Down in the fig trees, Mika's troop stopped their aimless chattering. They fell silent, listening. The sound seeped into them, and one by one, they began to sway. By the sparkling river, the otters paused their play. The parrots stopped their squabbling. The boars lifted their heads from the ground. A deep, primal memory stirred in every creature. In his cave, old Tumba opened his eyes. A slow, deep smile spread across his ancient face. He stood up, beat his massive chest in time with the boom, and let out a roar that was not of dominance, but of joy, a roar that joined the song. The rhythm spread. The elephants began to trumpet in time with the deep drum. The crickets chirped to the rhythm of the small one. The frogs croaked a bass line. The leaves rustled. The wind whistled. Every creature, great and small, found their part. The jungle was no longer a collection of separate noises. It was a symphony. Mika and his friends descended the Heartstone Peak as heroes, but they felt like something more. They felt like part of the whole. When they returned, the jungle was transformed. Monkeys swung alongside toucans, directing deer to the safest paths. Boars thumped messages that were instantly understood. The bees and the butterflies worked in shifts among the flowers. The great drums were returned to a sacred clearing, where any animal who felt the rhythm fading could come and play them. Mika still sat on his high branch, but now he didn't listen for what was missing. He closed his eyes and smiled, bathing in the glorious, pulsing, living song of the jungle. The fear was gone. The separation was healed. The heartbeat had returned, stronger and more beautiful than ever, because it was now a heartbeat built not on myth, but on the proven power of listening, of friendship, and of finding a song that only they together could create. The rhythm of the jungle was home.